by the beard of my father. The Rishatim Qasam. I swear that neither I nor my kinsfolk and friends, nor the kinsfolk of my friends and the friends of my kinsfolk, nor even the kinsfolk of my friends of my kinsfolk, and the friends of the kinsfolk of my friends have never been in this village or have ever heard or known anyone. This wise, they dropped into their first conversation, the first move in the great game of Spider and Hornet. Jangizamburu, Julgag. Agabek's questions were not without a definite purpose. Happily, this wayfarer was guilty of some breach of the law. If so, the thing was to seize him and hand him over to the guards, and thus recover his 750 tangas. Khoja Nasreddin smiled inwardly at his hopes, but did not hurry to blight them. Alas, there is but little pleasure. Know, O worthy sir, that not so long ago I possessed a house of my own and lived in easy circumstances, but it was the will of a malign fate that I should suddenly lose all and be reduced to this abject state you see me in, worse than a beggar. What was the misfortune that befell you? The story of my life is woven of 1,000 woes. I lived in Herat, where I occupied the very lucrative post of head scribe, to the overseer of the bazaar. In Herat, did you say? I lived there once. Proceed. I swear by Allah that my chief was well pleased with me. Sahib Mazma Khosh. I collected the place dues for him, charging for poor places at the rate of medium, and for medium places for the rate of good ones. Every copper that I was able to wring from a despised farmer or artisan, I carried to the house of my chief. And placed upon the mihrab of my devotion. My chief, in receiving the money, always said, "O Uzakbai, if I had 1,000 jars full of gold, I would trust you to you without fear the key of my vaults." And he was not mistaken. His property was more sacred to me than to my own. Thus had I been taught by my father, who had served as a steward to a grandee, and thus had I remained all my life. My chief rewarded my faithful service by allotting to me 1/20 of the income. Not much, remarked Agabek. Enough, nevertheless, to enable me in the course of 8 years to save up a considerable fortune. Another reason why I set store by this post was that it left me time for my learned pursuits, which I need not mention here. بس ما يتر كار بود كده غول بس ما بيصير فرايم ميتنستو عنده يخرم جاري يزوروني هالما دبريز تورا. Then all of a sudden يكدفقي a storm burst over the head of my chief. Musibat Belezuamat Agabek was listening very attentively, by reason of which Khoja Nasreddin gathered that his words were not being wasted. My chief made a slip. Aha, said Agabek, making a grasping and pocketing motion with his hand. His enemies were quick to report it, and my chief lost both his post and all his property. Which was seized as forfeited to the treasury. I understand, said Agabek, waging his fat head sympathetically. These slips sometimes cost a very dear, very dear. Another page of his past life had been opened to Khoja Nasreddin. The lamentable fate of my chief was shared by this one. And now I roam the world, not knowing where to lay my wanderer's staff and weary head. Doubtless I would have wandered to the end of my days. But for this providential encounter and unexpected gain. Agabek scowled and began to breathe hard. Khoja Nasreddin had touched a wound that still smarted. I shall endeavor to dispose of that money wisely. By playing game with someone else, huh? Agabek inquired venomously. The Prophet protect me from that temptation. Such good fortune befalls not twice. Nay, I shall choose a pursuit to my liking. Nana maiter paisar khajna zay nana mamu kare ki khod khosh daram damzumizna paisar. Trade karobar nahi. I feel not inclined towards trade. Karobar khosh na daram. Service in some quiet, secluded spot. Where I could continue my learned studies. That is my heart's desire. But who would give such employment to a stranger without pledge money? Now that I am able to pay the full sum required, however, you are going to look for a situation then. I cannot very well remain here. My ass, by the way, is rested and it is time for me to continue on my way. I thank you, worthy sir, for the 750 tangas. Hey, keeper, how much do I owe you for my tea and night's lodging? Khoja Nasreddin took the saddle, which had done service as a pillow overnight. And advanced with it towards the ass. The news of greed by which he had tethered Agabek to himself was totally drawn. Stay! Tarry! Cried Agabek. Seeing that his 750 tangas were about to disappear under Shaitan's tail. Return hither, I have an important word to tell you. The news of greed tightened. You are traveling in search of a situation. That is just what I desire to talk with you about. Oh, worthy sir, Khoja Nasreddin said, returning hastily into the chaikhana. Happily you know of some such place. Agar eko jai khabar dare place mar bugi diga. My gratitude would know no bounds. Ma khail ta akhiri ta zindagi par ma kasta astur azim shum. That's just it. Masaya. Oh, blessed word. And nearby too, Duram near. Just right next door, any nizdiga. Khoja Nasreddin's face expressed respectful puzzlement. Really? My esteemed interlocutor chose to speak in riddles. Sahib, shamo da bekhida ramz tora mungkin maid na mufahmum, which my contemptible wit is powerless to interpret. Ye aql ki madro ma aqlam chandan ne na mufaham gara sochi mungkin. Answer me first to several questions. And then I shall disclose to you the meaning of my words. Said Agabek. He actually believed that he was speaking in riddles. Answer me. Did you ever have occasion to visit our village before? I did not. Have you any kinsmen here? I have not. All my kinsfolk are in Herat. What about friends? And well, happily there is someone in our village with whom you are friendly, or had been friendly in the past. There is no such person here. No? My friends too are all in Herat. But happily your kinsfolk of those that have remained in Herat have friends here. Or contrariwise, your friends in Herat have kinsfolk here. Yego amzo kheshayet yego do rafiqai shemiji shnakhtai basha. Yego shnakhtai stu rafiqai amiji. By the beard of my father, the Rishatim Qasam, I swear that neither I nor my kinsfolk and friends, nor the kinsfolk of my friends and the friends of my kinsfolk, nor even the kinsfolk of my friends of my kinsfolk, and the friends of the kinsfolk of my friends have never been in this village or have ever heard or known anyone here. There remains one last question. Is your heart susceptible to attacks of foolish compassion towards strangers? Wisely spoken. And now prepared. Sorry. Khoja Nasreddin bethought him of the old caretaker at the tomb of Thora Khan. یک دفعه مودیات شمد که من نفر در رو بارش که میز نکره هم دل بود قریبار که استم تر فری آمیدت بزی بور کدت نه تمام تختنی ایدیات شمد یک دفعه گفت all the compassion of my heart I expend upon myself مارش که رحم است فقط بلی خود خرجم and there remains not aught for strangers all very begana ma cheez mujhe sakhawat karna march ki duron bale khud kharjno wisely spoken khayli khub and now prepare you to hear something wonderful that will make your heart leap with joy to khoshhal chuni tu saw you here the local lake and know you who owns it khabar dili mujhe ek din banda sa mantaqa sahib humse khabar kiya At long last, it was out. The word for which Khoja Nasreddin had been working so hard. Keeper of the lake echoed like thunder in Safar's ears. Keeper of the lake, repeated the turtle dove under the eaves. Keeper of the lake, responded the caged quail. Keeper of the lake, hissed the cooking pot, wrapping itself in a cloud of steam. Keeper of the lake, puffed the wind. Keeper of the lake, murmured the trees. And 10 minutes had hardly elapsed when all the villagers, young and old, had heard the tidings. Keeper of the lake was on everyone's lips everywhere. In the fields and in the clean-swept, tidy yards. It was spoken of among the men, gossiped of among the women, babbled of among the children. When Agabak and Khoja Nasreddin went forth lakewards from the Chaikhana, everyone who met them made low and obsequious bows before them and regarded the new keeper with timorous curiosity, while he passed by stern and haughtily, without deigning to notice their salutations. 3. Old Safar did not remain alone in the Chaikhana for long after they had quitted it. The villagers flocked in. At once and drowned the old man in a flood of questions. What had Agabak been speaking about with the new keeper? What arrangements had they made? What payment was the keeper to receive? The dice of the Chaikhana creaked ominously. The teapots hanging over the hearth swayed and clinked, and small rubbish dropped from the ceiling. You will pull my whole Chaikhana down in a minute, Safar shouted. Some of you get off the dice and stand on the ground. If you do not, I shall tell you nothing. Several of the villagers stepped off the dice, leaving it in the position of half a score of the most venerable worthies. Safar related his story. There is no need to repeat what we already know. He finished his story with the ominous words, one was bad enough. Allah knows, and now we shall have 2 on our hands. Silence was his only answer. Silence and heavy sighs. All those gathered in the Chaikhana envisioned a dim but dread apparition of inescapable and impending woes. Safar hung down his grey old head and continued his oracular pronouncements, himself deriving therefrom a terrorsome relish. Big doings will soon begin here. Very big doings. Alas, it bodes us not but ill. I fear me. And like a muffled echo, someone answered, it bodes ill. Chapter 25. Agabak led Khoja Nasreddin to the conductor, Ariq, upon which was built a large wooden chute with a shutter that kept the water locked in. Look, said Agabak, pointing to the moldy shutter darkened with age, which sat firmly between 2 elm wood posts with grooves in them to enable it to move up and down. You shall guard this, and open it to no one without my consent. Over the chute stood a windlass with a rusty chain. Below hung a huge brass padlock on the thick rings, and above it the water dripped through a crack in a clear trickle and rolled down the moss-grown boards in hurrying drops. The shutter of tears, Khoja Nasreddin said within himself. Shutteri tear ramshi azwishti qatra qatra misli abdalli mayadro. His thoughts turning to the unfortunate villagers. Give no one any water on trust. The qarz namidi. Not even half a tanga's worth. Nim rupiam to the danini. Agabak admonished his new keeper. Here is the key of the lock. Keep it always hidden. Qaimbil, some cunning knave may memorize the notches in the bit and make a second key. Khoja Nasreddin put the key away, then gave Agabak the purse that he had won. Rupi ki burdat, qarar batwar gurna, maga let this be my pledge money. Pledge money is that?
Sure.
Yeah. Ego jai tu paisa meli token money यार एक मतलब तो बेतवारी है मसलन कि तो बात खुद ज़मानत के पैसे इन्हें पेश रुपये रुपये ज़मानत में पेश कीशी दिगा मतलब ये नमक अस्तु करावदात करूँगी यानी रुपये में पेश तो बेल चाबी की पेश में बाशा. On a mound nearby stood a clay hut with a door overlooking the lake. बस एक खुलबा मंजूर बुद एक खाने गिली की रुख से सुनी बांध बुद. You will live in your hut. उन्होंने खाने थे उताक थे said Agabak. Every night you shall approach the shutter and satisfy yourself. और शाओ ये चेक कितनी तू shutter बंदस्ते है ना. That the lock has not been tampered with. Do you understand? Will you remember? I understand, and I shall remember, Master. With these words, the ceremony of initiation into his new office was completed. Agabak hied him home by Vaiguft, carrying away a grin in his beard and a purse in his girdle, and rejoicing at having so cleverly succeeded in catching his 750 tangas by the very tip of their tail. In a month or a month and a half, I shall find some excuse to dismiss him. And keep his pledge money for myself. Karam buramazi, as farigna.
Zaman ki uçiz kardara desin. Ya ki bir vaud darozda program.
For what need have I of a keeper? When I have managed excellently all this time with the simple aid of a strong and reliable padlock. Reflected Agabak. I shall recover my money, and that is all that counts. He recovered his money indeed. But what he lost in the process, he could not even imagine. That evening found Khoja Nasreddin settled in his new home by the lake. The lighter half of the clay hut he took for himself, placing a bed of boards in the corner and mending the broken down hearth. The second, darker half he partitioned off with poplar poles for the ass. Is your new abode to your liking? أو خانه نوت خوشت مایاتی؟ He asked as he poured some barley into the ass's feeding trough. The question now is, how are we to understand this abiding together under a single roof? Is it I who am being reduced to an asinine condition? ایمانا از چی یک مورد زیر یک دانه سخت قرار گرفته امروز. مطلب از این است که مطلب ما دسته استوم دوم. Or is it that you who are going to make believe that you are a human? یا تو امشب باور که ما انسان شدم چون قد انسان ده یک سخت قرار گرفتم. Not without purpose did he utter those words. ایمانا داشت. In them lay a hidden meaning that was waiting to be translated into deeds. Record بود kinali atay Adam shudiga. Adam giri riyad bigar. When and in what manner that would happen, Khoja Nasreddin knew not yet. Ki tu Adam shudani, ma khar shudani. The evening dragged its melting length, one of those soft whistling evenings that restore harmony between earth and the sky, and flood the world with a serene light. Khoja Nasreddin was sitting on a boulder by the doorstep of his clay hut, gazing at the lake which was already vanishing into the misty blue of twilight. When Khoja Nasreddin swam to the surface from the depths of his reverie, night lay around him. The air, laden with dewy scents, had grown cool, and the hour of sleep had come. He stretched himself, yawned, and turned to go inside. A low voice sounded from around the corner. It is I, my mom. Saeed.
Oh, Saeed Not
yet. The figure of the youth loomed dimly in the darkness. Wherefore are you here? Khoja Nasreddin said, surprised. I have heard it said that you have accepted the post of a keeper of the lake. And so I have come to find out whether it is true. It is. It seems to trouble you. Wherefore? The youth hesitated. Now that you have disposed, you may forget about you and your matchless Zulfia. Khoja Nasreddin took the words out of his mouth. Oh, unwise youth, lacking strength to trust a friend, whence these doubts? Learn to trust, for that is the greatest art which is needful to us in life. Fate is like a noble Arab mare. She suffers not a timid rider, but submits to a brave one. Do you understand? Yes, forgive me. Seek not meetings with me. Come not until I call you. No one must see us together. Spoil not my game. I have spoken, and you have heard. Now go. And once more, the sleeping garden, the silvery mist, the throaty song of the nightingale, the tinkling rustle of the lizard, and an excited whispering in the shadows. Ali do excited experiencing kiya the shadows. I saw him yesterday through a crack in our wicket. He was going from the Chaykhana together with Agabag. He was so stern and haughty, and I wondered about his promise to help us. Oh, Zulfia, wherefore have you not the strength in your heart to trust a friend? Learn to trust, for that is the greatest art that is needful to us in life. Do you not know what that fate is like a noble Arab mare? A timid rider she throws to the ground. A brave one she submits to. How cleverly and beautifully you speak, Saeed. Our old mullah could not have said it better. You must always remember, Zulfiya, that bleak winter is ever followed by sunny spring. And that is the only rule worth remembering. As for the reverse order, it were best forgotten. It is poetry. Said, did you compose it yourself? And for me? The nightingale broke off its song, the rustling lizard crawled into the hollow of a tree and went to sleep. The stars in the sky had noticeably changed their position. Vapor hung over the darkened water. Night was departing westward. 2 days later, the keeper of the lake appeared at the Chaykhana. He came after midday, when Agabak had played his daily game of chess with the Chaykhana keeper and gone away, leaving the villagers to enjoy their rest in peace. Without responding to the salutation addressed to him, the keeper of the lake went up to the bread cake baker, who on seeing him got busy laying out his wares to best advantage, putting the white browned ones on top. The keeper of the lake bought not one, nor two, nor three cakes, but the whole basket. In like manner, he bought from the seller of apricots his whole basket, then departed with his purchases. As was to be expected, this occasioned a good deal of talk in the Chaykhana. Wherefore did he buy such a lot at once? The bread cakes would grow stale, the apricots would go bad. Happily, he was a lazy one for walking and would now stay in his hut for a long time. But the same thing happened the next day too. At the hour of noon, the keeper of the lake appeared at the Chaykhana with 2 empty baskets, which he refilled, one with bread cakes, the other with apricots, and then departed, ignoring as before the salutations addressed to him. Assalamu alaikum, sahib. I lifted him there. The Chaykhana buzzed with excitement. What had he done with the stuff that he had bought yesterday? Ate it. But there had been enough for 5 men there. Here was a riddle. In the timid, humdrum life of Chorak's inhabitants, the event assumed the magnitude of sinister mystery. To make things worse, a shepherd poured oil upon the flames of gossip. Coming in from the pasture to buy some barley meal in the village, this shepherd had looked in on his way at the little hut by the lake. He had beheld there that which confounded his reason. The new keeper of the lake had been feeding his ass with white bread cakes and apricots. From which he had removed the stones and cut out the wormholes with a knife. The shepherd, while buying the meal, had told the shopkeeper about it. The shopkeeper, dancing with impatience, had shut his shop immediately and run off to the chaikhana with a tongue-scorching, gum-searing nut of hot news in his mouth. Tandoor mandoor ke ban kat. Khabar kishnit gut side chaikhana. Gut khabar dere chis kar shda. Feeding his ass. Feeding it with white bread cakes and apricots. Safar, the chaikhana keeper paled. Rahmatullah, the foolish wool beater, rolled on his back, convulsed with laughter. The miller and the butter maker would not believe. One intrepid man of the young ones undertook to go and see. He was lucky. He crept up to the hut unseen just when the ass was supping. Lucky store. He was eating white bread cakes and apricots, just as the shepherd had said, and the new keeper of the lake was making salams before him and feeding him out of his hand with cut halves of apricots from which the stones had been removed, and calling him illustrious one, high-born, Ali Janab, Salamun Alaikum, come apricot, and Royal Highness. The intrepid one returned to the chaikhana and related what he had seen from first to last. Tamam qissa ramaga. The chaikhana became a buzzing hive once more. Then it was true. Oh, Iras Buddha. But what could it mean? Yani chi? Shirmat, the potter, Kuzagar, tapped his forehead. That conjecture seemed the likeliest. But if so, how had it befallen that Agabag, that most cunning man of cunning, had failed to perceive that deficiency in the new keeper of the lake? And then that recent game of chess, madmen played not in such a fashion. Or haply, he and Agabag had secretly plotted mischief together. Ali Hazar rakam fikr maya ki each story Agabag chtor na fahmida ki rakam adama. Ya ina ki chess diroz ki bazi mukat ye bakhali me ko chal basha ye ardu milawa. Hazar rakam ard dan kesta on gufta rahi hai. And all the rest was merely an artifice designed to throw dust in people's eyes. Fakat ek drama bada. But what mischief had they plotted? Lekin cheez chal michla nahi na. Against whom was it aimed? The khilaf askiya, it could only be one thing. They wanted to seize all the fields and all the orchards for themselves. Mekhaya tamam bagh wa tamam ketra as khod kanaina bakhalim mekhaya mor mahrum kanazi. And my chaikhana as well, Safar added gloomily. I should have taken the 155 tangas which I was offered it for last year. Yak sal pesh mein guf yaknim sa tanga mekhrum charna ke tum sauda. Everything fell out as Khoja Nasreddin had planned. Khoja rakam plan kata un rakam sudar rahi hai. Over a game of chess, Safar told Agabag about the asinine feats that were held in the clay hut by the lake. Lekin Safar azdan chi burumsha. Diga roz ki umaya vere chess bazi kedo, baad aznan azdan chi burumsha. In order to witness the purchase of bread cakes and apricots with his own eyes, babar shna mat ma khud me cheknum ki waqai matlab nano cheez mein khrai kishmish. Agabag tarried in the chaikhana that day longer than usual. Noros der muntazir man ki waqai amit raste hai na. And witness it he did. Khoja Nasreddin purposefully bought 4 baskets, 4 khalta, instead of 2 before his eyes, and had to have recourse to the aid of the baker in carrying them home. In doing this, Khoja Nasreddin pretended not to notice that Agabak was there. But to himself he thought, he will come to my hut today for certain. Definitely impatient for the Zomdania. Towards the evening, he sprinkled the clay floor with water, fetched some fresh cut rushes and made the ass his bed, then cut the apricot in halves. شفتالو باشه یا زردالو
نه یه قسم دیگه چیز ما اپریکات
خب مطلب زردالو بگیم
زردالو
را کستن به نصف منا and laid them out in becoming order on a painted clay platter which he had bought from Safar for 8 tars. Through the half-open door he perceived Agabak coming towards the hut. And we stop here.